These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Bryce Tuskett, and thanks for spending some time with us this week on Market Journal. Coming up on the broadcast, we're going to be looking ahead to the very first Spur Ag Converge event, which will be taking place near Gothenburg. We'll also tackle a growing challenge across the Great Plains, woody encroachment, and share some helpful resources for landowners. And later on the show, Luke Beckman with Central Valley Ag will join us to do a deep dive into what's been impacting the grain markets. All of that and more is coming up here on the show, but first, the fall harvest does continue in just a few portions of the state, so we're heading back and into the field this week. We head out to the Panhandle and visit with Andy Groskopf to get to take on how his growing season shaped up this year.
For this week's In the Field update, we check in just north of Scottsbluff, Nebraska. That's where we find Andy Groskopf. Andy, we appreciate your time today. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of how harvest is going, quick background on your operation there.
We grow. I farm with my dad. We're 6 miles north of Scottsbluff, and we grow corn and dryable beans. We grow Great Northern beans, and everything's irrigated here.
Okay, so a couple of crops. Where do you find yourself at in the harvest season right now?
We're towards the end of corn harvest. We're on the downhill slide now. Hopefully, if the weather and everything, machinery holds out this weekend, we should be done.
And how about on those beans? Have you harvested those just yet?
Yeah, beans we wrapped up in October, and the yield on them was a little bit disappointing this year.
Let's focus on those beans. What do you think were some of the contributing factors for less than what you were hoping for when it comes to yield?
A lot of the things this year with everything being the way it is, it's because last winter, I can't recall one time where we had snow that covered the ground here. We're really dry. And then last spring with the irrigation districts not being able to burn the ditches and stuff due to the governor's burn ban, it kind of put irrigation season a little bit behind. And I think we were a little late with getting water on some of our crops out here.
I imagine those are some of the same challenges you faced with your corn crop. How have yields looked?
The corn crop is average or a little bit below. It's been a little bit disappointing for everyone around here that I've talked to. I mean, we've had from 166 is our low to 200 is our high so far.
You brought up some interesting challenges that not necessarily everybody in the state would face, especially if it comes to kind of that channel irrigation. Talk about the different irrigation practices you guys have in your operation, Andy.
Well, we have a pivot and we have gravity irrigation where we run it in a ditch between the rows. All of our water comes out of Wyoming, down the North Platte River and channeled out into canal systems. And if we don't have a winter in Wyoming this year, we're not going to be able to irrigate. The water carryover is, I heard it was like 5 days for next year. So we desperately need some snow, and especially a lot more snow in Wyoming.
Seems like it's been several years from right now, but there was a issue with one of the tunnels out there in Wyoming. Was that impacting your operation, Andy?
That's not on my operation, but it kind of affects us all here. That is a big component here to irrigate into western Nebraska, and they've started rebuilding that tunnel here just recently, so that's going to be a good deal that gets completed this winter.
One of the other crops that has grown a lot around the Scottsbluff area, those are sugar beets. Doesn't sound like you guys have those on your operation, but where's the sugar beet harvest at?
Sugar beet, I think everybody is wrapping up. You've seen a few trucks here running in this week, but I think all in all, everybody is done with sugar beets right now.
So, like you said, if things go on track, you'll be done with corn before too long. What comes next for you guys? Will you do any fall work after that?
We do a lot of fall tillage. It's the thing me and my dad kind of started. We like putting our corn stalks back in the ground, getting them breaking down and into nutrients and stuff for next year. We found out it's been really useful for us to do that.
And in terms of a crop rotation, those corn acres, will those to go to beans next year and vice versa, or what's your rotation?
Oh, some of it we have continuous corn on corn because of soil types and rocks and whatnot, but most of it is beans and corn rotated every year, half and half usually.
Andy, what else has happened this growing season that'd be important for our audience to hear about?
Oh, I don't know. Every year is different here in western Nebraska, with our irrigation and things like that. I mean, it's just been a challenging year here, just like it has all over the state, talking to friends and stuff east of here. And our yields are just like theirs, a little bit disappointing this year.
A big thank you to Andy for his time on this week's show, and want to let you know that is going to wrap up our In the Field updates for the 2025 growing season. We really appreciate all the producers who took some time to visit with us throughout this growing season, and we thank them for sharing their stories and insights. Up next, we know that grasslands are in decline around the world, and we know some of the main causes here, things like land being converted for agriculture, housing, or infrastructure. But lately, there's been a growing concern about another threat. It's called woody encroachment, and nowhere is that more visible than right here in the Great Plains. Market Journal's Bill Dodd has this story. Bill?
A little over half the land in Nebraska is considered grassland. Most of that is privately owned, and this is a critical agricultural resource for many Nebraska beef producers. In fact, grassland accounted for a majority of the agricultural use in the state of Nebraska. However, woody encroachment is one of the top drivers of grassland loss.
What we're seeing in Nebraska is as woody encroachment led by eastern red cedar expands across our state, you're seeing a loss of forage production on individual lands up to 75%, eventually gets displaced by eastern red cedar. And so it's a critical economic impact, but it also impacts all these other important resources and services we get because we're a grassland-based state. So not only does it affect agriculture, it affects all grassland-associated wildlife and the prevention of endangered species. It impacts things like disease vectors that happen when you go from a grassland-based area to a cedar-dominated area. Some areas, water resources are impacted. And the big one that we're starting to see is a big increase in wildfire danger due to the expansion of this volatile fuel compared to a grassland-based ecosystem.
Tending to the spread of eastern red cedar has seemingly become an annual chore for many landowners. While there are many methods of mitigation for this problem, the best solution is to eradicate any possible spread of seed.
So an individual female cedar tree can produce over 1 million to 1.5 million cones. They look like these little blue berries, and inside that berry is a cone. And recently we've done some work to show that 95% of recruitment happens for a cedar tree within 2 football fields of that seed source. So traditionally what you do is you'd wait and say, wait, I'm starting to lose forage potential as those trees got really big and displaced the grass underneath it. And you're never managing that seed source, and you're never managing seed that's hiding there in that grass and herbaceous layer. So what we've worked for people to do is understand if you see that seed source within 2 football fields, that area is already contaminated and expanding. And so we have to start getting ahead of it and preventing new seed source from establishing. And that's the resource concern, is when you're already adjacent or close by to seed sources.
Several groups, including Nebraska Extension and NRCS, have been integral in developing methods of control for eastern red cedar and will be putting forth a new initiative come 2026. However, the success of that endeavor will also rely on input and feedback from our state's producers as well.
If a producer has interest in, understanding like why we're seeing success in certain areas and how to apply that in their region, we're continuing to grow and expand this model and partnership. So 2026, we're looking to launch a statewide extension effort here from the University of Nebraska. So your local extension educators, give them contact. It's something that we're definitely looking to add this as part of our statewide model. The same is true for the NRCS, Nebraska Game and Parks, groups like Pheasants Forever. Reach out to one of those local partners that are there. They're all now, which is great to see, that we're all on the same page of how to start to get ahead of it. And that then starts to trigger like these local conversations. What we want to then be able to step in and do is showing success at scale is still something that's incredibly rare. We've documented that in multiple areas, but having that be kind of a canary in the coal mine is not our goal. We want to see this be the norm. And so what we're looking to do on the back end is be able to document the outcomes of what landowners are starting to do and change, show the return on investment in their areas, working with those partners that might have those local contacts they can reach out to.
Because woody plant encroachment occurs at various intervals of time and space, management approaches are needed that mirror that complexity. And the team at Nebraska Extension is ready to help you do just that. Reporting from Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.
Thanks for that story, Bill. If you'd like to learn more about some of the options when it comes to managing woody encroachment, you can visit IANR's Center for Resilience and Agricultural Working Landscapes. You can visit our website, marketjournal.unl.edu, to get a direct link to that website. Up next, we move along. It's our time to turn our attention over to the markets. For the first time since the government shut down, traders this week have been weighing expectations from the WASDE and Crop Production reports, both released just before our weekly broadcast is out. There's been a lot to unpack this week, from the reopening of the U.S. government to the latest trade negotiations. So joining us to break it all down this week is Central Valley Ag's Luke Beckman. Here's our discussion from Wednesday. First, quick harvest update. Where you're at near Elgin, Nebraska. Harvest pretty much wind down at this point?
Yeah, harvest pretty well wrapped up, down to the last few percentage points remaining really across northeast Nebraska. So it's been a good harvest run, a very nice local crop in this part of the state for sure, with the growing season that we had. So producers overall, on average, pretty pleased with the production.
We've got the crop largely taken out of the field. Let's talk about marketing it now. First on corn, let's begin there. You mentioned to me earlier that the charts are showing we could be breaking out perhaps to the upside here, depending on how the data shakes out. We do have that WASDE report that's going to come out on Friday before, that's after you and I are talking, but before our broadcast will be made available on late Friday and into Saturday. Talk about corn, where you see things going at this point.
Well, the corn balance sheet is really split between what we see in the domestic carryout and what we see in the global carryout. In the U.S., we have ample supplies of corn, and that was really due to the large acres that we had this last spring. There were not a lot of great alternatives to growing corn, and so the U.S. producer loaded up on corn acres. One of the things we saw in the September stocks report was that it was much larger than expected. We had a couple 100 million bushels of corn that was a bearish surprise. The market's known that for a long time. It'll be incorporated into the data that we see on the 14th, which will add to our supplies. Why it's important, though, and we already knew that, why that's important is the USDA likely has the ammo to reduce the feed and residual estimate number for the new crop, or the 25-26 marketing year that we're getting into. So even though we expect the size of the U.S. crop to come down, there is some demand that probably gets cut to keep our carryout at a pretty healthy level. So purely fundamental, the domestic carryout's big enough to keep corn prices under pressure. However, we've really seen a nice lift in corn futures over the last 40 days, and it just feels like this corn market wants to bust through some resistance and really get into the next 20 cents price band and maybe push December futures up into that 450 level. If that's the case, it really feels like the producer's ready to reward that type of a rally. And based on just what we see in the domestic carryout, that would really be a pretty attractive price considering what we have. Globally, the corn carryout continues to get a little bit tighter. And we're going through this process right now where we're really building a nice demand base. You've got currently the total usage for U.S. corn over 16 billion bushels. That's massive. That's a record. So as we go through these lower price periods, we're building demand and setting us up for that next cycle where we do trade to higher prices. When that happens, we don't know, but we're definitely building a layer of demand while prices are low. So long term, I think there's going to be some opportunities in the corn market.
Luke, want to get your thoughts on how the cash has looked particularly on corn here, as I ask this question here in 2025 and how that perhaps has differed as compared to previous years.
Yeah, you look at Nebraska, we're going to have a nice crop this year, and really the Western Corn Belt has recharged the pipeline. A few years ago, the Western Corn Belt was really in a deficit situation. The U.S. West Coast was in a deficit situation. And so producers in Nebraska certainly got accustomed to very attractive basis values. We had robust rail programs exporting corn out of Nebraska. And of course, they all know that we have a robust processing market locally here within the state, in addition to livestock. Fast forward to this year, and that pipeline's been recharged in a great way. All the way from North Dakota down through Kansas, there's good crops locally. So they've certainly noticed that basis values locally are much, much weaker this year, probably the weakest they've been in a decade for this harvest time period. And that's a function of no export program on soybeans this year. Soybeans are occupying commercial space, farm space that typically don't sit there. And also you had a good corn crop on top of that. And you've got a lot of other suppliers that can hit these domestic and Mexico type markets for corn. So the cash markets are very weak right now, and they will recover as we come out of harvest. But a lot of this will be dependent upon whether anything does materialize with China on soybean exports, where we can clear our throat of excess soybean supplies and create space for this large crop that we're dealing with. So expect basis to be weaker as we go through this year, and that's really just a function of the pipeline being totally recharged.
You brought up a couple of factors we've been tracking in the soybean market. Quite a bit of a bounce here in that market over the past 40 days, as you mentioned, for corn. Soybeans following that pattern as well. How sustainable of a run do you think this is, or are we one tweet away from back to where we were?
As soybeans could really go either way. We've all heard about the 12 million tons that China is expected to purchase this year, the 25 million tons they're expected to purchase each of the next 3 years. We need to see how that materializes. I mean, as of right now, our export program is terrible. I mean, we haven't exported enough soybeans to move the needle to even meet the USDA's forecast as it stands today. And this would be the weakest export total that we've had since the trade war year in 2018. So the state of U.S. soybean exports is not good. But if we can get something done with China, our acres were low enough this past year to where you could really tighten the domestic carryout up and really push soybeans into a new price band. Soybeans usually don't spend a lot of time in the 11s, Bryce. It's really a transition price as we move from low to high or high to low. So we've kind of consolidated in this area after breaking out of an 18-month trade range from 975 to 1075. So this market certainly has the potential to move up another leg, another dollar, if you can get some export business done and keep our carryout below 300 million bushels. You get some headline type activity that pushes prices higher as well, and that can help us. And now we've got managed money with long positions again. So as the government reopens, we'll be super curious to start monitoring two things. One, what does the commitment of traders report say about managed money and their positions? And two, can we start to see some export sales information in the form of daily flash sales to China or other global buyers, and just see what's already on the books? So soybeans really potentially could go a couple different ways, but a lot of it just hinges on, can we get an export program going here in the U.S.?
My thanks again to Luke for joining us on this week's show. Good to get his take on what's been impacting the corn and soybean markets. Well, anniversaries mean something, even when they bring back some sad memories. This past September marked one of those moments for Pam Bengstrom, an agroforester with the Nebraska Forest Service. It has been 11 years since Pam lost her father, Francis, after a 4.5-year battle with prostate cancer. Now she is sharing his story, hoping it encourages farmers and ranchers to get a simple PSA blood test. Early detection is key to beating this disease. You can read more about Pam's story in the November issue of the Nebraska Farmer. It is officially the time of the broadcast where we check in on weather with Nebraska Extension's Eric Hunt. Eric, what kind of weather are you tracking as we turn out to the next 7 days?
Thanks, Bryce. Definitely has some chances of moisture coming up here this next week, and for some of us, that'll be the first decent moisture we've had in quite a while. First chance will be early this week, late Sunday into Monday, as a shortwave ejects from the Rockies out into the High Plains region. That'll open up chances for moisture across the entire state by late Sunday night into Monday. Now, we're not looking at significant amounts of moisture. We might squeeze a quarter inch out here across portions of the Panhandle, maybe the northern part of the state. Generally, probably a tenth of an inch or less across most state. We may get almost nothing here closer to the Kansas border, but certainly at least there'll be something, which there's parts of southwestern Nebraska, the Panhandle, really have not had any appreciable moisture in quite a while. So that would be good news. Middle of the week, looking at generally mild temperatures, we're going to be doing a lot of ridging aloft here across this portion of the country, middle of the week. Now, our high temperatures coming up here next week are not way nearly as warm as they were to finish out this current week, where we've been exceptionally warm, record warm in some cases. Generally looking at highs, upper 40s to about maybe 60 degrees a couple days to get closer to Kansas border. So seasonal afternoon temperatures, but generally a little bit warm at night, hence the warmer than average signal for pretty much the entire state as we head through the majority of this next week. By later Thursday into Friday, though, we're looking at troughing coming from the west out here into the southern plains. We should see a surface low develop somewhere in Texas or southern Oklahoma and move toward the northeast during the day on Friday, or maybe late Thursday into Friday. Timing's still a little bit in question here, but later in the week for sure, we'll be looking at a storm system coming in this portion of the country. And pretty good chances of rain across this entire region. We may actually see some chances of snow here across portions of west central and southwestern Nebraska during this. Now, that's a little bit up in the air, no pun intended. A lot of this will depend on how much cold air we can get wrapped around this or how much evaporative cooling we can get. But certainly there's some indications in some models we may get a couple inches out of this. Better chance of getting more moisture, though, as we head toward the eastern side of the state. Right now, the National Blend of Models shows a reasonably good chance of picking up over an inch of rain here across the east central and southeastern portions of the state, but really a pretty good chance of a half inch of moisture or more for most of the eastern 1/2 to 2/3 of the state, and even some chances of better moisture out here across portions of the Sandhills and getting into the Panhandle, where we really actually could really use some moisture here right at the moment. 8 to 14 day outlook, the CPC shows above average being favored across pretty much the entire country, more bullish here in the central plains and southern plains. Now, again, this is somewhat reflective that storm systems coming in here later this next week. There's also probably going to be some chance of getting more moisture in here early the week of Thanksgiving, and there are some indications in the models we may see an active pattern developing again right around Thanksgiving. A lot of inconsistency is what's probably going to come in about 2 weeks, or maybe a week and a half from now. But there are some indications that we may get a storm right around Thanksgiving, so maybe pay close attention to the forecast as you get later next week for Thanksgiving, because it may actually be interesting for travel purposes. There may be some snow to deal with in some parts of the central U.S. that we haven't had to deal with here in recent years right around Thanksgiving. Temperatures will likely stay relatively mild for most of the week. Again, not quite as warm in the afternoons as we've been here of late, but certainly still pretty good for November. But as we head into early portion of December, there are some good indications that we will see some polar vortex stretching affecting portions of the continent, or at least a good portion of this continent. If that happens, we're likely to see some much colder air come down here into the western and north central portions of the country. So we may see a very quick change to really cold temperatures as we head to the first portion of December. Now, again, this is not a guarantee, but this has been a signal I've been seeing the models now for several days in a row. Multiple models. There are a lot of indications are that polar vortex stretching would actually have some impact on us here in the central U.S. So we may actually start off December very cold for the first time in several years. And there's also an indication that we may see some snowfall with this. So we have not had much snow at any capacity across most of the state or region here in December in recent years. We may see that here as we head into the first part of December. Again, that's a ways out, so don't go to the bank on this, but it's certainly a possibility as we head into that portion of time. Recent precipitation, we did actually pick up some moisture across the northeastern quadrant of the state this last weekend. Did include an inch or two of snow here across the far northeast corner in Concord at about 2.5 inches. But we did see some expansion of abnormal dryness and drought here across the Panhandle. I think very well deserved at this point. It's been very, very dry out there the last 30 to 45 days. Soil temperatures mostly right around 50 degrees, and the temperature and precipitation around it for the weekend, November 8th, 2025. Back to you, Bryce.
Thanks for that update, Eric. We appreciate it. And finally, today, an event is coming up in Gothenburg for producers, students, and educators alike. Spur Ventures, an innovation hub and venture lab within UNL's Department of Biological Systems Engineering, is dedicated to speeding up innovation in agriculture and climate solutions. This group brings together startups, producers, ranchers, industry partners, and investors, all working to advance technologies that can make a real impact in the agriculture sector. On Monday, November 24th, you'll have the chance to take part in this immersive event showcasing cutting-edge ag tech solutions developed through the university's Startup Collaboration Program. More importantly, it's designed to break down the silos that often separate innovation from its end users, the growers.
And this event is really, producer-focused and hands-on. You will see conversation between farmers and startup founders, industry folks, and researchers and leaders within the university. And our main goal is to, bring all different actors of innovation ecosystem within agriculture and biotechnology at one place and have meaningful interactions and conversations and engagement and activities. One of the things that we designed for this particular event is called Farm Tech Adoption Challenge. And I'm really excited about this. So, and we have startup companies. So we have a startup showcase as well. So the startup companies will be pitching at the competition. And so within a typical startup pitching contest, startup pitches to investors or economic development institute. But here we flip the script and they will be pitching. These startup companies will be pitching to a set of farmers sitting in the audience. So we'll have farmers roundtable after the pitching contest, and farmers will basically evaluate these startups. First, startup companies will be matched with certain set of growers, and then farmers will evaluate these technologies and give them feedback and their own insights, whether they would like to, whether farmers would like to adopt these kind of technologies or not, or whether these kind of technology fits in with their farm operations or not, in what conditions and why not. So that's the Farm Tech Adoption Challenge, which creates a lot of value for growers and startup companies and this kind of setup. And I'm really excited for this because here, farmers also have an opportunity to compete because this is a Farm Tech Adoption Challenge, and farmers can win cash prizes within the competition based on the quality of insights and feedback around technology adoption they give.
If you'd like to be part of this event, it is coming up Monday, November 24th from 9 to 5 Central Standard Time at the Bayer Water Utilization Learning Center there near Gothenburg. A light breakfast will be served during the registration. After that, participants can look forward to startup showcases, the Farmer Tech Adoption Challenge, an industry academic panel, tech demos, an innovation showcase, and plenty of networking. Entry is free for students and producers. To pre-register, visit the direct link along with this story. Find that on the Market Journal homepage. Well, folks, that is going to do it for this week's edition of Market Journal. Quickly, let you know if you missed one of our stories, follow Market Journal over on YouTube and on social media, where we invite you to join in on the conversation. We hope to see you back here next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.